Hello, everyone. My name is Paola Gomez, and I am Muse Arts Program Director. Welcome to Artists Holistic Wellness, which is part of our Ties to Community Winter Activation Program, a series of conversations with artists and other professionals, shining the light on artists in our community's mental health and wellness. Today, we're going to explore healthy thinking. But before we get started, I would like to take a moment, and I will invite you to take a moment as well to consider the lands where we live and where we work. Also consider the histories of those lands and recognize the people that had been and continue to be the stewards of that land. In my case, I acknowledge that I am currently located in the traditional indigenous territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit. I wish to express gratitude to Mother Earth for all the resources that we're using. And I would like to honor all the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people that have been living in this land since time immemorial. Let us reflect on what it means to respect all living creatures and what it is to act with compassion and care for each other. I also would like to take a moment to express gratitude. And before I pass on the hosting to our wonderful Veronica, I would like to introduce, who will introduce our special guest in this conversation. As I said, I would like to express gratitude to Factor, the foundation assisting Canadian talent on recording, for offering the supports needed so programs such as Ties to Community can come to life and impact our communities positively. We are extremely grateful for the support that we receive, and we're looking forward to our continuous collaboration. Without any further ado, I would like to welcome and introduce to you Veronica Gomez. Veronica is a community facilitator, an emerging artist interested in creative writing and literature, and who aspires to travel the world and connect with others. She currently works with Muse Arts, supporting different programs, including the coordination of this important online series. Veronica, welcome, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Paola, and welcome everybody to our 5th session of this Artist Talks Holistic Wellness online series. Thank you so much for tuning in every week. Today, I'm very excited because today's topic is healthy thinking. Of course, we know that healthy thinking is crucial to our holistic well-being. So as we enter today, we enter with an open mind, with a creative mind, as we are diving into a self-love activity. So I invite everybody to have a piece of paper and a pen, any writing utensil you might have, as we are going to engage in some activities. We're going to be talking about wellness, about balance in life, and all the fun stuff. So I do remind everybody to have a piece of paper and pen with you. Also, a reminder that our chat is always open to any comments, any questions that might arise as we are moving into the presentation and, of course, into our discussion. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end. So, of course, pop in your questions, your comments, and we'll go over them at the end. Before we start our whole presentation, of course, I want to begin by introducing our amazing guest speaker, Hanan Hazim. So Hanan is a multidisciplinary artist, creative writer, community arts educator, and a creative writing instructor. I will now give the space to Hanan to fully introduce herself and talk a little bit about her artwork.
Hi, thank you, Veronica. Thanks, Muse Arts, for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight. So it's Veronica's son. My name is Hanan. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, a creative writer. What else should I say? I facilitate workshops in the community. I've been doing a lot of online workshop facilitation. So I say I've had a interesting journey with my art in relation to wellness. So initially, I began to create art that just because I love making art, but part of it was because I needed to channel some of my pain and trauma into the art, which was very therapeutic. And so I created a lot of work that showcased my pain and trauma, and then that's been on exhibit. But recently, I've been feeling like I want to actually showcase my joy through my art. So I'm just gonna share some of my older art and kind of show you the transition that I've gone through in terms of my practice. I'm trying to share. So some of my art at the beginning looked more like this. So this piece is called I Am Fine. And as you can see, it's a self-portrait. And this was born from a lot of pain that I was feeling where I look like I'm okay and like I'm fine. But sometimes I'm not, because I'm dealing with a lot of mental health issues, physical health issues. So to me, this was just like a visual representation of the fact that I have to constantly mask or pretend that I'm okay and that I'm fine when I'm not. And also when people ask you like, oh, how are you doing? And you just say, I'm fine. And there's no probing further. Nobody really follows up to see if you're really fine. It's just kind of this like social expectation. That's what you're supposed to answer. So that's what you say. And so this art piece was a depiction of that frustration and that feeling. And as you can see, there's some like scary looking skulls there in the background. So this was some of like my earlier kind of artwork around wellness, where I just really wanted to channel that like anger and fear. And then I began to kind of create a little bit more positive. I call these like positive affirmations. So this one is a 6-word story, and it says, we hurt, we heal, we grow. And it has some images of flowers or plants growing. It's really colorful. So this is like very opposite of some of that earlier work that I was doing, which was really a lot more painful. And I'm mostly, I guess I'm sharing my visual work here, but I like to blend my creative writing with my visual work. So here's another piece that I also call like an affirmation art piece. So this is a piece of found poetry. In particular, it's called cut up poetry. And I cut up these words from a magazine and kind of turn them into a very short poem. So I will read it. So it says, darkness falls where stardust hides. So untie your broken wings and embrace your beautiful array of light deep in space. So as you can see, this is a lot more positive. And it makes me feel better to look at this kind of art as opposed to that earlier example I showed, which showed a lot of pain in it. And since then, I've also recently really felt like I don't really want to even talk about my mental health in my art. So I've been just kind of having fun creating art like this, which is a space whale. And I think it's still therapeutic, but it's now, instead of kind of channeling through my anger and fear and pain, I'm kind of channeling through my joy and things that make me happy. So that's been a transformation for me, like I guess in my artistic journey and in my wellness journey, where I feel like it's actually more productive for me to focus on positive thoughts, positive thinking, positive experiences, and to pull from those and to pull power from those, because is power from trauma. Like you know, you're always being told like, oh, you're resilient, you're powerful, you're strong. So you can gain strength and power from negative experiences. But for so much of my life, I haven't realized that I could also gain power and strength from positive experiences, that it's really important to pull from our joy as well as our trauma. We shouldn't focus on either. So, because there's also toxic positivity, and I'm very much against that. Like, we shouldn't just pretend like, oh, everything is perfect, everything is wonderful, you know, there's no issues in the world. I don't agree with that at all, but I also don't think it's healthy to constantly be focusing on the trauma, on the pain, on the oppression. We need to balance the two. So what I wanted to talk about in terms of holistic wellness or healing, and this is just my kind of personal understanding that I've thought of. Just gonna share another image. So I think we really need to look at ourselves as a whole. So as mind, body, and soul. And you can't be well if those three parts of yourself aren't well. But I wanted to take this further and say that wellness is not an individual feat. It's not something that we can achieve by ourselves. So I've been feeling more and more like you can't be well in a society that isn't well, that's not functioning well. And what I mean by this, especially for artists, is a lot of the things that we need to do to be well are not things maybe that we can achieve as individuals, but we have to achieve as a collective. So, for example, if we want to focus on wellness in terms of a relationship with our body, so things that are often recommended are things like healthy eating, which is wonderful. But if you're an artist, or if you're, you know, a person of color from a marginalized community, sometimes you're unable to eat healthy because you don't have access to healthy eating. So there's such things as food deserts. So you might not have access that way, like literally in your neighborhood, you might not have access to food, like to a grocery store that you can easily go to and purchase food. You might not have access in terms of your financial ability. Fruits and vegetables are very expensive, so you might not be able to afford to eat healthy. You might not have access in terms of like maybe you're working all the time, so you don't have time to cook a healthy meal. So you're just going to eat maybe whatever is easiest for you, whatever's going to fuel your body, and that might not always be the healthiest choice. But again, I don't think in that case it's not really upon the individual to say, I'm going to eat healthy if you literally, the system's not allowing you to do so. So I think that's very, very important to mention. But also, we do still have some control. So you can try to make choices within those limitations to eat healthier. And that's what I've been trying to do for myself. Sometimes, you know, you could find food that's discounted, or if you go to more of like the indie shops, you can get some fresh fruits and vegetables there. You can utilize food banks. So there are some ways to maybe try, but I just wanted to emphasize that there are systemic barriers, especially for people of color and for artists who might be from a lower income bracket, artists with disabilities, artists with mental health issues. There are struggles in that case. And another part of body wellness, I guess everybody knows, is exercise. So So again, there's kind of this idea of like, oh, maybe I need to go to a gym to exercise. And I think we've all felt during the pandemic that nobody really has access to gyms anymore. So how can we exercise? Well, we can take walks. We can try to do yoga in our own apartment. And like I'm been telling people, I really don't have space in my apartment to do yoga because I am an artist who is lower income and I live in a very, very tiny house. So I really literally do not have space to do much physical activity. So sometimes the only physical activity I'm able to do is walking. But if you do have space, then you could do things like dance or yoga or just different activities that don't require much money or resources. So you don't have to be, a fitness guru at a gym. You can just exercise in whatever ways that you can, like choosing to take the stairs instead of the elevator, anything like that. And again, I'll emphasize if folks have disabilities, that might not be attainable, but it's doing what you can while also recognizing that there are real barriers to these this advice that's often given in terms of wellness. I just really wanted to emphasize that because as an artist who has been trying to achieve better health and I'm on my own wellness journey, I've faced those barriers myself. And I found it really, really frustrating when people just, say to me, well, you can just do yoga. And I'm like, well, I literally do not have space for that. So that's something, again, that's been impacted by COVID. Before the pandemic, I was able to go attend, free yoga workshops in community centers. And that's been taken away. So I'm just trying my best. And sometimes my best just looks like taking a walk. So that's one thing with body. And then for mind, again, that's something that we can try to achieve wellness within our mind. But there are limitations. Access to therapy, again, is very restrictive sometimes. We don't have a lot of resources for mental health, and even less so during the pandemic. So that's something that really, really affects marginalized communities, especially artists. We are trying to, get help sometimes because you see a lot of adverts of like, oh, if your mental health is down, you should get help. But sometimes we can't get help because the help is not there. It just doesn't exist. The waiting lists are very long, or it's unaffordable if you can't pay out of pocket. If you don't have health insurance, that's something a lot of artists do not have health insurance. So we aren't able to, get our green shield and pay for a therapist. So what we end up having to do is just sign up for free therapy whenever we can. It's never so that's something I just wanted to kind of keep that balance of like, I don't want to tell people, oh, you should go to therapy when I know that could be very difficult. But if you can, then yes, you should try therapy. But in place of therapy, something that I found very helpful is just peer-to-peer support. So just reaching out to friends and family and talking through with them, or keeping like a diary or a journal where you can write out your thoughts. There's also a lot of cool apps that you can use to kind of do self-therapy, just reading various self-help books. And again, I will note that if you are experiencing depression or very severe mental health, that this might not be very easy. You might not have the motivation to do those things. But if you are able to, they can be very helpful. Also, we were going to say, as an artist, I do highly recommend making art. And what I'll say is, I'm not an art therapist, so you can actually do something called art therapy. And that's not the same as what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is just like literally make art. Get out, whatever you have at home, like crayons, markers, just create something. And just that act of creation can be very, very therapeutic. I do also recommend trying art therapy if you are able to, but they're not the same. I think creating art for a therapeutic benefit is not the same as art therapy. Art therapy is a little bit more clinical, and there is a counselor there, and then they're guiding you through the therapy that's happening. But I think just creating the act of creating art in itself, even if your intention isn't for it to be therapeutic, it is naturally. It just art, I feel like it's very cathartic. It just makes me feel better to be creative. And again, sometimes like if you're not feeling really well, it's hard to be creative. And I think getting started is the most challenging thing. So today we're gonna be doing an activity where we can see that you don't have to have a very formal, concrete form of art. You don't even have to be an artist to create art, because I think people have this idea of like, oh, well, I'm not a professional artist. I haven't created art, since I was in grade school, and I painted, finger paintings or something. But I think anyone is capable of creating art, because there's also different forms of art. There's visual arts, there's music, there's poetry, there's performance, there's dance. It's all art. Even cooking, if you like to cook or bake, that's an art form. I like to even sometimes think of different scientific endeavors as art. So art is really everywhere. Anytime you are creative, you are embodying the artistic spirit. I think. As I feel like I'm babbling right now, but the third point was spirit. And I think a lot of times for spirit, the wellness recommended for that is to do something like meditation. And I found for me that certain meditations, like mindfulness meditations, where you're just maybe sitting in a chair and doing deep breathing and trying to like empty your mind, that does not work for me. So you have to find the right meditation that works for you. So the meditation that works for me is something called Shinrin Yoko, which is forest bathing. So it's going into nature, or into a forest, and meditating there, meditating upon the nature, just like really listening to every sound, like the crunching of leaves under your feet, birds chirping, feeling the bark on a tree, just really using all of your senses to very slowly and intentionally notice and commune with nature as you're walking. And I find that to be more meditative for me than some of the sitting meditations. So you have to find the meditation or spiritual form of prayer that works for you, because not all meditations work for everyone. And I think if you're doing the wrong form of meditation, you're just going to get frustrated, and it's not going to work for you. And that's what happened to me. I was like, no, I can't do meditation, because I just can't just sit there and empty my mind. I can't. So I need to be out. I need to be walking and doing these different walking meditations. And I find being out in nature really helps. And I'm really excited that it's spring because that means I can go on these forest bathing walks more often. And even in the winter time, we are able to go on these different walks. So overall, for holistic healing, I would say that as individuals, we can try different methods to further us along on our healing journey, but really, it's difficult to achieve wellness when you're an underpaid artist who has unstable housing. When you're maybe a person of color who is constantly seeing very upsetting, very tragic news of hurt and harm that is happening to other people of color. That's all, there's all this intergenerational trauma that we've all went through. So there's like a lot of modes of oppression that we have to deal with. Racism, sexism, ableism, Satanism, for me, Islamophobia, and all of these contribute to unwellness. So I think as a society, we need to battle all of these modes of oppression. We need to attain justice in order to have a society that is well, which will in turn contribute to the wellness of individuals. So things like advocating for universal basic income, for universal health care, universal mental health care, having access to therapies. Just I think all of these forms of, I guess, their political activism will lead to better wellness for everybody, for society as a whole. Like all of society will be healthy. It's very difficult to be healthy as an individual when society isn't healthy. But like I said, we can all try to do these little things in our own wellness journey that'll make us feel better. But yeah, that's what I think, that a healthy society will have healthy individuals, and an unhealthy society is gonna have unhealthy individuals. So we need to get to the root of the problem and not blame ourselves.
Hanan, I had to turn on my camera and I had to interrupt, of course, what you were saying for a minute because I felt so deeply, it resonated with me very deeply. And I want to touch on the fact that you touched on, of course, mind, body, and spirit, our whole holistic well-being, which is the whole series that we're trying to do. And I also want to acknowledge that you touched on the barriers and the privileges that some of us do have. And when we talk about this, we don't want to sound like we're telling you to do this so then you can be well, so then your wellness can be supported, but because we can talk from places of privilege, right? So thank you so much for acknowledging that some of us don't have the resources to do stuff. You talked about food insecurity, you talked about income, all of these topics we've talked about along our journey of 2 months in this series. So thank you so much for kind of, in summary, you didn't even know you were doing it, but in summary, you kind of touched on every single topic we've talked about in this event, on this series. So I think it was amazing. Everything you were saying, we've explored, and you went even further into that. And I love how you went into the mind, the body, and the spirit, right? You kind of broke it down, and it was really educational for me. I kind of needed that, and I didn't know this whole idea of meditating outside, and instead of, because I've always heard of you sit down or in a quiet place, right, and you try to empty it, but it doesn't work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That really doesn't. And some people have never tried meditation because they hear of that and they simply go, no, that can't be done. I personally can't do it. And that's 100% okay. And the fact that you brought another aspect of meditation into that, thinking if you can't do it inside in a room, you can go outside, enjoy nature. Some of us we meditate in that sense, but we don't know we're meditating. We think of it as a walk, but that's meditation.
It is, yeah. Also there's something I really like called ecstatic dancing, which I also found to be very meditative. So I think for me personally, maybe other people this resonates with them. I need to be doing something. Like I need, I think they call them walking meditations. My body needs to be moving. I can't just sit still. And then that actually quiets my mind. So even sometimes things like washing the dishes or cooking, I find those to be meditative as well. So I need to you can kind of embody that idea of mindfulness in many different ways. It doesn't have to just be sitting in a chair, listening to like a guided meditation on your phone. Like doesn't have to look like that. You need to kind of find out like what works for you, what brings you joy, or what makes you feel restful and calm. And that's going to look different for everyone. But I think in mainstream society, that's why I was going through all those things that we're often told, like, well, you need to eat better, you need to exercise, you need to, go to therapy, you need to meditate or have some kind of spiritual practice. And there are real barriers to those things. And sometimes what works for mainstream society doesn't always work for us as individuals. We just need to be aware of that and not think of ourselves as failures. And this is all coming from my lived experience. Everything that I said, obviously, I'm not, a social worker, or a psychiatrist, or anything. I'm just an artist who has some mental health issues, physical health issues. And it's all something that I've experienced myself, and I've experienced these barriers and lack of resources and the frustration and kind of casting the blame on myself. So it took me a long time to kind of realize, well, it's really not, my fault sometimes that I'm not eating the healthiest. It's because I sometimes just couldn't afford to eat healthy. So I had to do whatever I could to sustain my body and basically stay alive.
100%.
Yeah, and like you go to food banks and all they give you are these canned goods. They're loaded with sodium.
Right.
That's not very healthy. I've been doing a lot of research into it, and there's just so much sugar and everything. And recently I read this article where it's like they're feeding palm oil to cows.
Yeah.
So if you're consuming dairy, then you're indirectly consuming palm oil, and you might not even know that, because who's thinking of that when they're
of course
having, some cheese or yogurt, and you're like, well, so sometimes even when you think you're eating healthy, you don't even know what's being added into the food, and that's not something that we can pinpoint to individuals.
Right.
Well, yeah, failed, when it's like the system and the government and capitalism, and that's what's causing that. And I mean, I didn't even go into like the whole climate change and all of that. And I think like all of those things are contributing to global unwellness. And so we can try our best as individuals to be well and to be healthy, but I think we really need to address the systemic failures that are occurring. Like for me, I just can't separate the two. And
100%.
Yeah, and I no longer blame myself. Like I used to blame myself, like it's my fault, but it isn't. It's
right. No.
Yeah,
it's definitely acknowledging that sometimes we do the best that we can, and sometimes that is not enough, but also not letting that deteriorate our mental health and deteriorate our holistic well-being, because sometimes it's not even our fault. Like you said, it's bigger than us.
Yeah. So that's a lesson that I've learned, is just to do the things that I can control
Exactly.
what I can. And if there's things that I can't control, to just try to let them go. And I can try my best, to advocate for social justice, to advocate for reform, to advocate to fix these broken systems, but also knowing that that's going to take a long time, and it might not even happen in my lifetime.
Exactly.
but that's a start. And so I wanted to also say, so I've been trying to move towards, like I said, maybe away from focusing on trauma and to focusing on self-love and radical joy. And this is especially coming because as a person of color, as an artist of color, I've experienced a lot of trauma and a lot of hurt, and a lot of all those isms that I mentioned, like Satanism, ableism, right? It's just like it piles on and it's so heavy. And I feel like a lot of times artists of color are asked to even carry that labor and to talk about it. And we're never asked to talk about our joys or about things that we love or any of that. We're sort of always asked to kind of talk about these negative things.
Your struggles.
Yeah, our struggles. So I wanted to do an activity based on self-love and what I've been calling radical joy. So I've personally sort of switched my activism to say, I am going to be happy. I am going to bring my joys forward. And I feel like for me, that's just transformed my life to kind of have this new mindset of like, I'm not going to constantly focus on my trauma anymore. It's there. I think it's important to have those conversations about, racism and ableism and all of that. But it's also important to celebrate our successes and our joys as well, and to have that balance, because I've felt like we've been tipping the balance more the other way. So I want to balance it out now. And so I can start with the activity.
Amazing.
I'll just give everybody like a minute. Grab like a piece of paper, some kind of writing utensil, like whatever you have at home. So I have a marker and I have a piece of paper here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have everyone close their eyes. And you're going to take the writing utensil and you're going to hold it with your non-dominant hand. So if you're right-handed, you're going to hold it with your left hand. And then you're going to take your dominant hand. So for me, it's my right hand. You're going to put that on your heart. So I'm going to put that on my heart. Right? Well, I guess you can't see on the camera, but I'm putting it on my heart. And I'm going to take my writing utensil. I'm going to place it on a piece of paper. And then we're going to close our eyes. And we are going to visualize our heart and just kind of take a minute to feel your heart. You can take a deep breath. We're going to feel our heart beating. We're going to visualize it. So what does your heart look like? And then we're going to imagine there is a beautiful, warm, glowing light surrounding our heart. And it's growing and growing. And it's growing bigger. And it's going to leave our chest. And the light is going to travel. And it's going to connect with the hearts of people that we love. So you can imagine the hearts of people you love, and their hearts are glowing, and the lights are going to merge together. And we're going to visualize these lights merging, and all of our hearts are going to connect in a beautiful, beautiful light, and the light is going to envelop the entire globe. And then just hold that image in your head. And then you're going to start scribbling onto the paper. And while you're scribbling, just think of things that bring you joy. Just anything that brings you joy. And as you do that, you're just going to scribble onto your paper. Don't have an intention. You're just going to draw out different lines. You can do swirls, circles, doesn't matter what it looks like. But while you do it, think of things that bring you joy. We're just going to do this for a minute or so. Okay, so we can all open our eyes again. Just take a deep breath and then look at what you drew. So this is my piece. Oh, I'm disappearing. And then you could do this now or you could do it later. What you're gonna do is take your piece, and then if you have color pencils or markers, just anything with color in it, and you're gonna go in and you're gonna try to add some color to the piece. So I'm gonna just take here as an example. So we color in parts of the piece. And it just, I know it looks like a scribble, just looks like a random scribble. But kind of the idea behind it is that you can create art, and it doesn't have to look like something that's going to be in a gallery. And this is, I'm calling this art from the heart. And you can take this and just, color it in. You can add lines to it. You can add words, just transform it until you feel like it's complete. And I'd love if anyone's done this exercise, if you want to, take a picture and then maybe post your shared piece on the Muse Arts, the comment section. That would be like really cool. I'd love to see everyone's pieces. But the second part of this exercise is to look at your piece and kind of think of, maybe what does it look like? What does your piece look like? What does it remind you of? Is there a word that comes to mind? And then whatever word or phrase comes to mind, you're going to take that phrase and you're going to create a sound poem with it. And I would actually encourage you to go and really yell out this sound poem like somewhere in nature. It's something that I like to do. So I'll go into the forest and I'll do sound poetry. And I find that actually very, very therapeutic because it's kind of primal in a way. So it's almost like yelling. So I'm just going to give you an example of what you could do. So if we take the word joy as an example, for a sound poem, you would just break down the sounds of the word joy to create a sound poem. So you're going to focus on the different sounds of the letters. So you're going to go like maybe like joy, joy, joy. oi, 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 joy. So that was a mini sound poem, like a little sample. But yeah, if you want, you can, if you don't want like your neighbors to hear, because it sounds a little weird, just kind of go into like a forest or a ravine and just really scream it out. Just really scream out that word that you thought of. So that will conclude the activity. I hope everyone liked it. I know it's a little weird and it might kind of be like, oh, this is out of my comfort zone, might make you feel uncomfortable. But I promise if you try it out, it really makes me feel better because it's completely letting go of that control, and just having fun and playing. And it's kind of like nonsensical, but it really kind of activates like a different part of my brain. And yeah, it kind of calms me down.
That was amazing. Now looking at my paper, it's you know what? I think the part that I like the most is the fact that nobody else is gonna know what we were trying to draw or what we're trying to express but ourselves. And of course, if you choose to tell anybody about it, I love the kind of intimacy it has with yourself and talking about self-love. I think that's so important. That's like it's our art we made by us, and that was amazing. And
yeah, and
the
it's
whole
for you. It's all
exactly. Exactly. And the whole of course sound poem, I've never heard of it. I always learn so much with you. That's why I always appreciate so much my time with you. And of course, anybody watching this on live and on YouTube later on will appreciate all the methods that you brought into this conversation today, because I've never heard of a sound poem before.
Oh,
And the demonstration was amazing. Of course, it can be out of your comfort zone for many people. I've personally never tried it before, so it's definitely out of my comfort zone. But the fact that you've introduced it to us, it's a stepping stone to
it's
even
really fun. Like I recommend looking up this poet Bill Bissett. So he's
okay.
actually a local Toronto poet.
Nice.
He's great. He's one of the greatest Canadian poets out there. So I recommend looking up his poetry because he does a lot of sound poetry, and he was my introduction to sound poetry. And it's really fun. But I find it to be actually like very very therapeutic, especially when I go out into the ravine. There's like a ravine near my house. My husband and I, we go together and we just create these sound poems. And all you have to do is just like pick a word. So we'll just kind of look around the ravine and we'll pick different words. Like we'll make a sound poem out of the word tree or leaf or whatever comes to us in that moment. We've had like sometimes people kind of stumble upon it and they're just looking at us like, what are you doing? Like you're weird. But it just feels so good. Because I don't know if anyone else ever has this urge of like, oh, I just want to go and just like scream. And this is like a very creative way to kind of get that scream out.
Amazing. 100% agree with that. It's a very new way, and it's something that don't knock until you try it. You know that saying? It's definitely one of those where give it a shot. If it's not for you, it's not for you.
Yeah.
If it is, then it's definitely gonna be something that you can use really anywhere, even if it's like in your house and your parents or your siblings or whoever you live with might think you're crazy or something. At the end of the day, it is for you. So just try it out. I think
these
amazing...
are I feel like very private activities. It's self-love. It's for you. You don't have to share this with anyone. Again, if you do want to share it, though, I would love to see everyone's drawings. But you don't have to. You don't have.
100%.
You could even maybe try to map different things out into your scribbles. And I recently watched a movie. It was called A Map of Tiny Perfect Things. And sort of the premise of the movie is this couple, they go out through this town that they're in, and they try to map out all the perfect moments, like these little perfect moments in the town that happen. And I just thought that was really, really beautiful thing to do. And like you could maybe try to map out, on this page, like perfect moments that you've had in your life. And it could be anything. And the other day I felt like I sort of experienced one of those moments when I was walking and I saw a hawk fly off of a tree branch and into the sunset. And it was just this like very magical moment. So that's something maybe that I would put onto my map right now.
Yeah. No, we always find ourselves in kind of those moments. And definitely when we think of our mindset and healthy thinking, we always relate back to those moments where you felt like a sense of peace and oneness, right? I
Yeah.
can just imagine. And the way you were describing earlier, the how you walked through the forest was so therapeutic in itself. I was just imagining myself doing it, and like as you were telling it, it was so amazing that I feel like there's so many ways that we can implement these things learned today into our daily lives where it can really help us. And
Yeah,
of course,
definitely. And
yeah,
it's so important to focus on, and I really like that it was like tiny, tiny things, like just really small things.
the
And to
smallest,
focus on
yeah.
that. And like for me, I personally don't like gratitude journals. They kind of make me anxious.
Hmm.
And I like that idea more. So that's like something that I prefer to like a gratitude journal is to kind of, I'm going to maybe do a journal or maybe just take photos or just have it in my head. This like map. I really like the idea. This like map of tiny perfect things, like just like these perfect moments, like a bouquet of beautiful, magical moments that I can look back on when I don't feel that great.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like we talked about this whole time. There's so many different things that we can do. And in the arts is something incredible that's very therapeutic and can really aid in our holistic well-being. So
Yeah.
any form of arts that we can tap into is amazing. And thank you so much for bringing all these ideas to light
Yeah, I hope
because
it helps
everything,
someone. I know some of them are
yeah,
weird. I know that, but I think the most kind of important thing that I would say here is just try different things out, and a lot of it might not work for you. You might feel like it's garbage, it's not helping, but you never know. You never know when something might actually resonate and work.
exactly. And it all starts with like educating yourself first on it. So like joining these type of conversations to even open up to these ideas. Because if I wasn't in this conversation, honestly, I would have never heard about these forms of therapy really. So it's always opening yourself up to these conversations and then educating yourself. Of course, you entered the sound poems, something that you had to educate yourself onto, of course, before even trying it out. So
Yeah.
it all starts with that, right?
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and it's not all, just like, oh, mindfulness or, whatever, like sitting in a room for like 20 minutes trying to empty your mind. Like there's so much more therapeutic methods out there that you can utilize. I think that tends to be like the most common one that people know of or that comes up. But yeah, if you like do research, there's a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, and we really we touched on so much things today. I think this was an amazing session. And unfortunately, our time is coming to a close. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. But of course, I want to thank first and foremost Paola for making this space possible, for thinking and imagining these spaces where we can share ideas and we can inspire each other and in order to aid our holistic well-being, which is so crucial to who we are as people. Of course, I want to thank our amazing guest speaker, Hanan, for all the knowledge that you always have to share. I never get tired of hearing you talk, and hearing everything you have to say is so valuable. So thank you so much for bringing that into the space
Thank you for
today.
having me be here. And I hope, I hope I wasn't babbling too much at one point,
Not
but
at all.
I just felt like I really wanted this to be super organic. I didn't really have anything, pre-written. It was just, I'm going to come in and be raw and vulnerable with my
Yes.
thoughts and feelings.
Yes, and I thank you so much for that, for
Yeah.
talking on experience. I know sometimes that can be emotional, and I want to thank you for being vulnerable and being open enough to share your experiences and your knowledge with all of us tonight. It was amazing. Of course, I want to thank everybody that tuned in. Thank you so much for all the support, of course, and anybody watching this video later on. If you made it this far, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. And before, of course, we go and we say our goodbyes, I want to remind everybody that next Tuesday is our final holistic well-being event of March. We're going to be continuing the online series in the Happening Festival in May. But for March, it is our closing event next Tuesday, March 30th. We'll be talking about a very, very important topic, which is violence against women. So I hope to see all you tuned in, and thank you so much for supporting our event. See you.
Bye.